Welcome into Basketball by Association. My name is Tyrese Maxey. That is Joel Embiid. Welcome into the program, everybody. Joel, see what I did there? Do you see what I did? Do you see what I did? Now, granted, my name has nothing to do with Tyrese or Maxey, but you know what? It wasn't the feud of the night last night as we're talking. Joe, how are you, partner? We, as it looks, if I'm looking right on the internet here, we've still got basketball, and these games count.
I'm doing well. I think you're probably doing better than me, knowing that your New York Knicks don't have to host the Miami Heat yet again. Although getting the Philadelphia 76ers is kind of a really crummy consolation prize when it's all said and done. But
you mean the fractured, broken down 76ers? Is that who you're talking about here?
Yeah, the ones who beat the Heat that you didn't want to see. Ergo
by one, and it was a close game without all that game. You know, it was neither one of those teams is playing really great right now, and it was a pretty good basketball game itself. But like
it was Eastern Conference basketball all the way. It was playoff Eastern Conference.
It was a little surprising that you got into the triple digits, although it's low triple digits still, and it took to the very end of the game to get into the triple digits, but still, they all count. Joel, I'm glad to hear you're doing well. These games apparently do count. So we're in the play-in stages, as you guys are probably aware of the calendar speaking. And I'd like to if we go ahead and just start with the game we're talking about right now. The Tyrese Maxey-led Joel Embiid second-fiddled Philadelphia 76ers beat Miami, which means they get the 7th spot. So guess what, Knicks fans? We don't have to see the stupid Heat probably ever because they'll get eliminated immediately. Maybe even tomorrow. So God bless, that could happen. But what did you think of the result in the game itself as you were watching it last night?
First half, it's easy just to say, well, the Sixers were turning the ball over too much, but it goes a lot deeper than that. What I saw was the Philadelphia team that was really trying to touch pass a lot, which you absolutely cannot do around the Miami Heat, especially come playoff time. There is no room for touch passing, especially in a zone. Philadelphia had trouble with Miami zone, which is constantly changing. They talked about it on the broadcast a lot. The zone is really like a blob. It's amorphous. It doesn't have a shape. So it's really hard to key in on any one thing. And Philly had to know coming into it that Miami was going to play that, but you still have to get up to that level. And first half, when shots were not falling, Philadelphia was playing good defense. They were being physical, but silly passes that are off balance, touch passes. Miami was just all over that. And in the second half, you sensed an adjustment coming out at halftime in that Philly upped the intensity on both ends. The ball started to move a little bit more crisply. They weren't panicking around the zone. I think that was a Nick Nurse adjustment. And really, probably to the Heat's detriment, the zone worked so well in the first half that they likely stuck with it going into the second half and didn't necessarily adjust all that much. And so Philly was able to battle back into it, cut down the turnovers. And then, of course, on the Miami side, they struggle in half-court offense. They're down Terry Rozier. Duncan Robinson doesn't play in that game. And then when you lose Jimmy Butler on top of that, yes, he still played, but he was back
definitely. He only had 12 points. He was hurt since the beginning of that or the end of that first quarter, and the story just came out. He's going to be out for the next several weeks. So it was a tough scene for them to be able to try to recover from that with all their other issues with the half court. Like it was just going to be difficult for them the rest of the way. And God bless them. They were in it to the end to try to be able to win it. The last few possessions were what basically separated everything. But yeah, like you said, they struggled in that half court.
It's really similar in magnitude, to Zion leaving for New Orleans, a game that we'll talk about in a little bit here. The only difference is Zion left in the last 3 minutes of that game and they lost. And Jimmy Butler, while he played through the entire game, was hurt early and so was neutralized for a lot longer. And let's be real, Miami, whether they have Terry Rozier or some of those other guys who've been missing, Josh Richardson hasn't been playing, whether they have those guys or not, they are almost always out-talented at just about every position, save Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler. And when you're playing the Philadelphia 76ers, I'm sorry, as good as Bam is, Joel Embiid is better. So you're outranked in that position too. When Jimmy Butler becomes neutralized, you no longer have any positions on the floor where you're going to out-talent anybody. And to Miami's credit, they defend on that string, they communicate, they're disciplined, they move the ball, they do all those good things as a team. And yes, they have some talent. But Philadelphia was able to lock in, and they've got an advantage at Tyrese Maxey's position, at Tobias Harris's position, at Kelly Oubre Jr.'s position, and who knew, at Nick Batum's position last night too, where he comes in huge and starts knocking down threes. And it's a dust-off game for Batum, who used to be able to do that 4 or 5 years ago. And we don't really see any Nick Batum games like that recently, where it looks like he's been running on fumes for a couple of years. Still a big body, a guy who knows how to defend, but that's about it. So kudos to Philadelphia. They just escape at home. But man, Miami made them work.
Yep, and we'll talk about their future opponent coming up in just a moment, because now it's time to talk about the other Eastern game that happened. How about the fighting Chicago Bulls? Billy Donovan still got something for somebody. Kobe White goes for 42, and they roll the Hawks. More Knicks fans joyfully screaming last night into the TV. Good, Trae Young. Suck an egg. Okay, so that's right, suck an egg.
Good Hawks. Good Hawks pun there.
How about this? That loss was the first time the Hawks had ever lost in the play-in tournament. They were 3-0 beforehand, which is kind of funny to think about. That
it is.
They clearly have the most bodies in that tournament at this point, or that part of the tournament. Also, Kobe White's 42. It's the second most ever scored in the play-in game. So I think who was it that scored 50 like 2 years ago? It doesn't matter. But it's the second most ever. And Chicago looked great. Atlanta also looked terrible. I don't think this means a whole heck of a lot going forward for how good Chicago can be and how deep they can run. But Atlanta, man, outside of a few years ago where they were just sort of chopping down the Knicks and stuff, this team has just been middling at best. I mean, every time they get sort of one of these chances to have a big moment again, they collapse. They're just not well put together.
And you're running out of scapegoats because you've changed coaches. You know, prior to Nate McMillan arriving, it was a coaching issue, and then Nate McMillan comes and they play better, and then it becomes his fault, and then it was a John Collins issue. But both of those guys are gone, and yes, you can point out that Onyeka Okongwu wasn't playing. He's been out for, months at this point, and there's a couple other guys like Jalen Johnson, guys that would have been helpful that were not available. But the starting lineup still is about as talented as you're going to get. The bench is kind of a mess. But between DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella, Trae Young, Bogdan Bogdanovic, and then DeJounte Murray, that's a nice starting five. It's just, it still doesn't feel like it fits. You still don't know whether Trae Young is actually a winning player. You still don't know whether guys really like playing with him or not.
Isn't that the weirdest part? Like, to me, it seems like Trae Young is special. He's a very, very, very good player. But it does feel like that whatever comes around him doesn't work, and he's kind of the common factor here. Like, he's so I don't know. Like,
it feels a little James Harden-esque, doesn't it?
That's fair. That's fair because he puts up good numbers. I'm talking about Trae Young again. Like, he played fairly well for his numbers again. But there's, what was it going into halftime? Last night where Trae Young just dribbling the ball around, right? And DeJounte Murray's like, dude, we just ran out of the clock because you just dribbled around like a prick. Sorry, you just dribbled around like some jerk for a while. Like, what's going on? Like, we're trying to win a game here. Like, this is our playoff lives.
I've said this before in the playoffs and around teams that are struggling. You watch body language as a big indicator, and yeah, it's not an end-all be-all. But when multiple times I see Trae Young set up Clint Capella or somebody else, the one I'm thinking of, he throws a lob to Clint Capella. Capella jams at home. It was a nice pass. Capella, nice finish. Capella doesn't even give a point to the guy who threw that lob to him. There's no high fives. Capella gives a high five to Murray as he walks back, but no even eye contact to Trae Young, no acknowledgement. That's weird. That sort of thing is weird when you pay attention to it, especially when you see the opposite and teams that are locked in, and a team that is typically locked in and has good chemistry, they're struggling when those things are not happening with that regularity. That's how you can tell a team is getting frustrated. And for it to just not be happening organically, it seems like in Atlanta, is weird. Again, I don't know if it's time to point the finger at Trae Young, but I'm just saying we're running out of scapegoats. And I do think it's time to acknowledge that, like, as good as Bogdan Bogdanovic has been, Clint Capella has been, maybe even DeAndre Hunter, you're going to have to continue shuffling that deck around Trae Young and continue working through different iterations of the Atlanta Hawks. I think DeJounte Murray deserves another year there. But you continue working through that until it becomes obvious that you can't shuffle the deck anymore, and it is a Trae Young problem, and then you've got to move him. We're a couple years away from that, but this is the natural life cycle of NBA teams.
Yeah. I mean, except for you're the Heat. But, like it really kind of is sort of it, right? So anyway, so this just Atlanta, bug off, you're out of here. So we got Miami and Chicago for the final spot in that 8th seed. Real quick, who do you like in that rematch?
I mean, last year I liked the Chicago Bulls. That's theoretically true. Without sans Jimmy Butler, I should like the Chicago Bulls again too. But Alex Caruso is dinged up, may or may not play. Sounds like he's going to try. There's
a reason this is the 8 matchup, right? Like you want to give Chicago a chance at this, but there's a reason they're battling for their life right now. And Miami feels like their whole reason was just like, we don't really care about the regular season. We just want to sort of get in. Plus, also they've been banged up a little bit too, but it's sort of been their MO for the last handful of seasons. So
it's how many more talented guards can Chicago continue to lose and still be able to get this done? In Miami's case, they're going to come out and play the same level of defense, same level of ball movement, whether they have Jimmy Butler or not. The issue becomes, can Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero step up in the half court and manufacture offense for that team? And the answer is yes, they can. They've done that before. There's no reason to believe that they won't do it again. Another couple days off, Duncan Robinson should be in the lineup here. They're probably not going to get Terry Rozier back in time. Maybe you get something out of the fumes that are left in Kevin Love's tank, but there's other guys there that will contribute. So on paper, yeah, I'd love to pick the Chicago Bulls, but how many times have we been burned by doing that? I think it's going to be a close one either way. I think if Alex Caruso can play the entire game and you're able to deploy him on Tyler Hero, that changes the complexity and complexion of that matchup a lot. The Bulls don't have another guy to go at and try to check Hero the way that Caruso can, and they really don't have a guy that's going to keep Bam from doing his thing, although he only had 10 points, 12 boards in that loss to Philly.
Yeah, Miami's the ultimate paper doesn't mean jack when we sort of talk. Like a lot of times you look at it and you're like, okay, that's why you're a 5-point favorite or whatever. Like we get it. But Miami's just like, I don't know why you guys are always sleeping on us, and I think they were like 4 or 5-point underdogs to Philadelphia, and they still got it with that last 3 down to 1-point game. So,
well, and here's the thing: like it's incredibly possible that Bam Adebayo, who had 10 points, has 30. It's possible that Hero hits 30. Even without Jimmy Butler, you've got Caleb Martin, you've got Haywood Hyde-Smith, and Javi Jaquez Jr. All 3 of those guys have shown this year and in years past that they're capable of 20-point games here or there. You don't want to rely on them to have to do that every single night, but somebody out of that group, and that's not even mentioning Duncan Robinson, who we know can go for 30 from downtown when the stars align. He's an incredibly streaky shooter. But on those nights that it's clicking for Robinson, he cannot miss. So there are still some weapons, in that Heat holster.
Let's look at the West that started off on Tuesday evening. We'll quickly get through the Lakers and the Pelicans, since you already brought up Zion leaving in those last the few minutes of that game, in which I mean it was a furious attempt at a comeback by New Orleans later in that game. Zion gets banged up. Zion sprinting into LeBron James. Like, it was a testy, feisty kind of game there. Both those teams clearly wanted to be able to win that game. Zion unable to be there for the last few minutes. And that team is sadly no longer with a shot at the 7th seed. So let me ask you this. Were you surprised by the overall results that the Lakers were able to win?
No, there was that point in the second quarter where New Orleans went on a big run, punctuated by a couple of huge Zion Williamson jams. He also had a massive block on LeBron James, and it felt like the Lakers were about to look old and
Yeah,
were about to potentially get run out of the gym. However, they responded on that same play where Zion just absolutely obliterates LeBron James with a chase down block in the same way that LeBron has done to people so many times. The Pelicans were not able to convert off of that block. LA forces a turnover on the other end, comes down and scores, and then promptly goes on a 12-0 run, I think it was, or 12-2. So the Lakers, they weathered that, and you saw that veteran ability that they have, along with enough younger legs on this roster, where it's like, oh, okay, nope, this is a game, they're not going away. And the Lakers continued to execute. For me, the telling thing, it's less the result that was surprising, it was more the way that it went down. But it was a microcosm of everything that ails the Pelicans. Zion is tantalizing when he's on the floor, but he's not on the floor when it counts, and he wasn't on the floor when it counted. Brandon Ingram also has been hurt a whole bunch. He tried to play. He'd been back only a couple of games. He sat the last 5-6 minutes, whatever it was, in a game that they desperately needed a star. I was kind of yelling at the TV, why is Brandon Ingram out there? Like, it shouldn't just be Herb Jones as the only lanky defender. Where is Brandon Ingram? Unless he's hurt, what is he doing on the bench? I know he was minus 16 and just 11 points, blah, blah, blah. But, like, he was sitting. Jonas Valanciunas was sitting down the stretch. Valanciunas had 4 points, 10 boards in that game. CJ McCollum was 1 of 9 from downtown, 4 of 15. So you're talking 3 of your 5 starters have been ineffective to the point that 2 of the 3 of them aren't even playing. And then Zion Williamson isn't even on the floor because he's hurt. And you're trotting out your second unit along with Herb Jones. And granted, the second unit gave him nice energy and all that stuff. But to play that group down the stretch and ride or die with them, that's not a vote of confidence for the starting lineup of the New Orleans Pelicans. And it is worrisome. And it also raises that question of how much longer can you do this around Zion and Brandon Ingram, as talented as they are, when you got 25 minutes out of Brandon Ingram and you did not have Zion to close out a game that you needed.
Yeah, I don't know if New Orleans is there yet with a
right. It's not yet, but it's like in Atlanta. You got to start thinking about it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think it's got to be close to the front of your brain. But the whole thing is, like, you get so bogged down in what it could be if one particular player is able to stay on the court when it counts the most, and when he's on the floor, and it's just, that's not something you've been able to rely on over his entire career. Actually, he's just not somebody that you could be like, okay, this guy's good for this, because when he goes out for the last 3 minutes, a very important 3 minutes, by the way, in that game, that it could be the difference of them playing Denver right now. Like, they could be the team playing Denver right now over that last 3 minutes if Zion's in at that point. So I'm not sure where, because, and by the way, New Orleans can still make the 8th seed, right? They can still make the 8th seed, so it's not the worst case scenario in the world. But I don't know, man.
But now you're going to do it without Zion, just like the Heat are going to do it without Jimmy Butler. So I don't know what their chances even look like.
Well, let's talk about that just briefly, because now we can talk about the Kings being very aware of what was on the line going up against the Warriors. And man, did they thump the Warriors. Klay Thompson was abysmal in that game. 0 for, that's called 0. Nothing. Bad. Very bad at shooting. And, we could talk about this in the offseason. He's now heading into free agency with, the least amount of momentum you could probably have as someone who was one of the Splash Brothers. And Sacramento said after the game, a couple of their players said, we knew what was going on. We knew who we were playing. We knew what we were fighting for. And they stripped down Golden State to their tidy whities, and they beat them down, man. They beat them down. And what a tremendous effort. Like, how I stand. I've said it 1,000 times about what the Warriors are, and now that they're eliminated stuff, they're still, for me, I've been on that train for a couple of years. But to see Sacramento show up in this sort of, like, they're the kind of ones that sort of came in and embarrassed our season that we had a couple of years. We had a chance to be the team, the fresh team, and we couldn't even get out of the first games and we blew that big lead to, like,
That's
the
just
fact that they got through all of that mentally, and to be able to get over that sort of big bad wolf that's sort of in their head, and to be able to move on to continue playing into play and to be able to have a shot at the 8th seed. I thought it was really cool for them. I thought it was really cool for them and a very good effort for them. That's how I like to see sort of a team respond to sort of, what has been a season that's been less than probably what they want in a very tough conference.
And it helped them too that it was the play-in format, and you just had to beat the Warriors once. Now, granted, this Golden State iteration has been so shaky all year that I'm not saying in a 7-game series I'm picking the Warriors, but it's not like Sacramento had any momentum coming into this either. They were dinged up. They hadn't played well down the stretch, but you are right. They got up for that game. There was a lot of stuff going on with that. 2 years ago, it was the Warriors Remember Us tour. Last year, it was just enough left in the tank that you saw their veteranship over a Sacramento Kings team that was just happy to be there and was just hoping to be able to put something together. And like you said, the Kings took their lumps. And now this year, the Warriors on absolute fumes. We all see the dynasty is done. And Sacramento has been disappointing all year, but they still have that starting lineup that works really well together, minus Keon Ellis being in the starting lineup now because of injuries elsewhere to Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk and those guys. But Sacramento really returned mostly the same team as last year. So if they can find that chemistry, there is something special there. We've pointed that out, and they had it that night at home. I'm picking them again over New Orleans just because New Orleans is not whole and Sacramento has momentum here now. But again, this is a Kings team that this momentum may mean nothing, and they may be the ones coming out putting up only 94 points in the follow-up game to New Orleans. Who knows? The Pelicans will defend, and they've got some weapons, but I like Sacramento a lot. I like that group. They've got to be able to harness that edge that they played with where they were winning all the 50-50 balls. They were so amped up. They've got to be able to harness that and transfer that to the next game. It cannot be, oh, well, we slayed the Warriors. Mission accomplished. Our season was successful. Cannot be that.
Oh, no. But, I mean, yeah, to get past this next game, yes, because it's going to be a really tough slog in the 1-8. But if they get past New Orleans, sort of be like, hey, listen, we're back into playoffs. And we fought through that. That could be.
Then all of a sudden, they become the veteran team playing an Oklahoma City Thunder team that has never been in that type of situation before.
Fair enough. Like the wily veteran of Keegan Murray. All of a sudden, like, man, I've been here forever. Right?
He is Duncan Robinson level streaky. Keegan Murray is another one of those guys where you will know in the first 5 minutes of the game if he's on, and if he is, heaven help you. But when he's off, then it's going to be like a 7-point night on 25% shooting.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think, but I like Keegan Murray. Like I think he's a really, really good piece for that team. I think I like him a lot.
I like him and Harrison Barnes together. There's a lot of teams out there that trot out what in the past would have been a 2 small forward lineup, and that's what it is. They're both small forwards versus power forwards, but because they can shoot, and because Harrison Barnes is a rugged defender. Portland tried that around Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum for a long time. There's a lot of other teams that deploy that type. I think a lot of it goes back to Orlando Magic with Stan Van Gundy when they had Dwight Howard and it was Rashard Lewis and Hedo Turkoglu. They proved that you could do that with some lanky shooters, a couple of small forwards. I like that type of setup, especially when your hub is a guy like Domantas Sabonis who can play out of the low block, can play out of the high post, is a phenomenal passer, and De'Aaron Fox playing with him. It's just kudos to their front office for recognizing the strengths that it would take to put around Fox and Sabonis, and they've got it, and that's not something you could say about Kings front offices for decades, it seemed.
Do you know the last time I thought of Hedo Turkoglu?
It's been a while.
Thank you for bringing that back into my business. Okay. Before we get to the remainder of the playoffs and such, what we know so far, let me ask you about a certain fella. Blake Griffin announced that he's going to retire from the league. I just want to get your thoughts on what you think for you his legacy is in the NBA. What do you think of when you think of Blake Griffin?
I think of the second coming of Sean Kemp. That's who I compared Griffin to during his prime. There had never been a dunker more ferocious or feared than Sean Kemp until you got to Blake Griffin. And there's been some amazing ones, and that's not to take away, Vince Carter, but I'm talking a power forward level dunker, a big body level dunker. And Blake Griffin was that. And there was the major question marks coming into the league, and then of course getting hurt right away. It was kind of an omen of things to come, but when healthy and for that 5-6 year stretch, Blake Griffin was a human highlight reel on a team built to be all over Sports Center with Lob City, just as in the same way that those Sonics, and I've got GP's jersey behind me,
right there,
those Sonics with the glove and with Rain Man, they were all over Sports Center, and they deserved to be. Kemp's downfall was drugs. It was a whole lot of other things that was going on, his weight after the lockout. Blake Griffin's, it was injuries, but both of those guys had large contracts signed that they weren't able to quote unquote live up to. And the steep decline out of that contract for both players was very quick. And then to the point of irrelevancy where it felt like, oh man, this guy is broken down. He's out of the league. And he's in his early 30s. Sean Kemp should have been able to play a lot longer. You think of the careers that a Charles Barkley or a Karl Malone or some of those pure power forwards, even Garnett and Duncan later on. That should have been the type of career that Sean Kemp had, and he never got it. That should have been the type of career that Blake Griffin had, and he never got it. In the case of Griffin, though, it wasn't self-inflicted. So there's always going to be that little bit of bittersweet. But I think we have to remember the good times with Blake Griffin and to go, that guy, he was all over my smartphone. He was all over Sports Center. He was one of those faces of the league that you really just like, oh man, did you see Blake Griffin's dunk last night? That's the way I want to remember Blake Griffin.
Yeah, I remember Blake Griffin as this guy coming out of Oklahoma. As you mentioned, he's the Thunder dunker, man. He was, the first thing I always think of, he jumped a car in a dunk contest. He jumped a Kia in the Kia dunk contest, right? Like that sort of, to me, is his legacy. And he's a multi-time All-Star. I think he finished in the top 3 of the MVP once or twice, and is voted. I think he was the Rookie of the Year his first
6-time All-Star, I believe.
6-time, yeah. So he's a very good player. But you're right, like what we could have had without the injuries, we will never know. And that's
the Detroit Pistons sure wish that was the case, right? They bring him in on that big contract he had signed with the Clippers and trying to pair him and Andre Drummond together, and on paper it should have been something, and it was nothing. Reggie Jackson there, Bruce Brown there.
So you think of like his, when he come in the league, like 2010, 11-ish, somewhere around there. You think of like his first 5, 6, 7 years, just a shooting star, like just this meteor that was so fun to sort of be able to watch.
2011 is when he came in. Just looking.
2011, okay.
Yep.
His first 5, 6, 7 years, just phenomenal to watch. As you mentioned, a guy that before the phone was in everyone's hands consistently, you were just like, "Hey, man, did you check out the highlights of that?"
His first 5 seasons were all. His first 5 seasons were all All-Star campaigns. He sits out the 1 year, the rookie year with the knee injury, and then goes 5 straight All-Stars. The 6th wouldn't come until he was in Detroit, and we all forgot about that. What year was the Detroit first? Detroit year that was in the. What year was that? 2019. He logged 75 games, which was huge for him.
Oh wow, yeah, okay.
And averaged 24.5 points per game and 7.5 boards, 5.5 assists. So in an Eastern Conference,
but he didn't play this year, did he? Like this is another one of those like Rondo. A couple like last time we talked, it was a guy that retired. He didn't play this year.
Yeah, he was on the Celtics last season. Didn't get a call this year, and just kind of took that to mean that the time is a time. I think for a lot of those guys to announce a retirement when you've sat out a year, it takes a lot to stay ready. It takes a lot to stay mentally and physically ready for that call. And to do that for an entire year, especially when you get to the playoffs and to go, man, I'm not even on somebody's playoff roster.
Right.
They didn't even bring me in for the last, dozen games or whatever. I'm gonna stay in this shape and stay this mentally ready for nothing. That's, I think, when guys look around and go, I made my money. It's time to move on. What's next? If they don't want to play overseas and so forth.
So I want to see if I can figure it out. You okay? Let's see. Quick math, figuring it. Okay. All right. Do you want to take a guess at how much Blake Griffin has earned in his career?
$260 million. I'm looking
Oh,
at it. Thank
okay.
you,
Well,
Basketball Reference.
I was like, "Holy smokes! I can't even
Yeah,
imagine you being that."
yeah. I
Being
know. I
that
was
good.
I was on the Blake Griffin page, and
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So I'll just remember him as this sort of shooting star, like
Mm,
the NBA is
right.
littered with these guys, right? The guys that flash for such a, and I would say 5 years is brief, but when you consider the
Yeah.
fact that he was in the till last year in the
Hmm.
league, okay, it was technically a brief time, but he was an effective player, but a hurt player all the time, and for a short time he was a dynamo in the league. He was a you gotta find this guy's stuff kind of guy
That's
in the
why I
league.
always say enjoy those players while they're there, because we can sit and knock them, on a show like this or on NBA Twitter or wherever. You can sit and knock this guy about what he's supposed to be and who he's supposed to be, but there's no guarantee that they'll even be back next year. There's no guarantee that they will ever be what they are right now. And then when they're gone, people aren't going to remember, oh, Blake Griffin had some playoff troubles. Oh, he had this issue, he had that issue. They're not going to remember that. They'll remember, oh, yeah, Blake Griffin was hurt a lot.
Yeah.
Man, I loved watching Blake Griffin. That's what most people are going to say.
Yeah.
And I guess
Look,
that's the way it should be. I just wish we would do that while they
LeBron,
were around.
LeBron's, Kevin Durant's, Steph Curry's, they just don't happen. Like they
Mhm.
just don't happen where you're that good for that long, and you can just be like, oh, I guess I'll catch him again. Like there's just so many. John Morant's a great example of that right now. We don't know what the rest of it is.
Right? Yeah.
Such a phenom right now, or up until basically last year. We don't know what the rest of it's going to be. So
He could become a Jason Kidd story where Kidd had some really rough early goings to his career. I mean, Kobe nearly went to jail, and his career was almost derailed. Could be a guy like that where, hopefully Ja gets it together and has a illustrious career. But then you always look at the Gilbert Arenas situation, right? Arenas got in trouble with guns. There was bad karma and bad juju following him all over the place. And as soon as he was allowed to come back and play, it was injury, and he never got back on track. Here's one question I have for you, Arky Shea. Is Blake Griffin a Hall of Famer?
No, he's not a Hall of Famer. No. I mean, to be fair, basketball puts everybody in the Hall of Fame. It feels like it's one of the less discretion. If you were to do the
eventually, it feels like, yeah.
If you were to do like the Arky Shea Basketball Hall of Fame, no. But if you were to do,
is that the lack of longevity for him? Is that what keeps him out?
Yeah, because his numbers are pretty good when he actually did play. But he amassed a number of years, but not a number of games over those years where you're like overwhelmed by the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
His averages are, if you look at them, are pretty good for the most part. It's just, I don't think you can put him in now. Can I have a wing for best dunk contest winners? I'd like to put him in that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, average 19 points, 8 boards a game, 4 assists for his career.
Yeah, and they're really nice numbers. They're pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I just don't know. That's not Arky Shea Hall of Fame numbers. But probably he will end up getting in because he was also more than just the basketball player. He was there was a time you couldn't watch an NBA game and not see his commercial show up everywhere. Like he used to be in everything. So, maybe there's sort of a cultural aspect that too. They meant a lot to the NBA culture at that time for that first 7 years or so in the league. All right, let's look going forward. I think we already sort of hear that you're thinking you'd like to believe the Bulls beat the Heat, and you think the Kings over the Pelicans. So we don't really have to go too deep into that. So we'll look into what happens then on Saturday when real basketball starts. Excuse me. The Magic and the Cavaliers is the biggest game of the day. Clearly, the Magic and the Cavs. I'm fascinated by this series because I think it could be a lot of fun, and a lot of people are going to want to watch it because of sort of the names on the jerseys in the game and the names on the front and back of the jerseys. But if you want to talk about a series that shapes up to be like maybe the most entertaining of the 4 that will start on Saturday, it's actually maybe the best, most entertaining first round series. I'm really intrigued by this one.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go most entertaining, but I think it will be very entertaining. They're evenly matched. Cleveland is a team that needs to get some playoff demons off its back. They've been loaded as a roster the last couple years, especially in the starting lineup. This year they rounded out the bench, although because they were hurt, a lot of, there's just been a lot of time missed where they weren't able to build the chemistry they wanted. Orlando is a team that has had some nice pieces for a little bit and suddenly was ahead of schedule. They were not able to keep that momentum all the way into the playoffs, but they're built on defense, and this is going to be their chance to come in against a Cavaliers team that is not invincible. I'm going to pick the Cavs in the series, but Orlando, this is a great learning experience for them. It is the type of team that you might be able to steal the series from if Cleveland has yet another, power outage type of issue. If Donovan Mitchell has yet another poor playoff series, or guys, continue to struggle with injury issues like Evan Mobley has had. But I do think Cleveland's deeper. They're more veteran. There's more weapons. Orlando will put up a good fight. This is definitely a series to watch. I am always a sucker for what they call the NBA TV playoff series, which is the smaller markets, the teams usually in the 4-5 or the 3-6 matchup, and it may not be as nationally compelling to the people who are fence riders and they just jump in. But this is the type of matchup I want to see because it's going to be devoid of the usual LA, Miami, Chicago, Boston, New York, big market bias.
Well, not New York,
from the announcers and just from the league itself. You can always, it's palpable when that's there. And so to be able to get into kind of, a more of just a pure matchup, I like those. And I like when I know that it's like, yeah, this is good basketball. And the people who are fence riding fair weather fans are probably not tuning into this one. That's the series I want to watch.
Now there's value to those. Those bring in eyeballs of people want to go. The NBA just announced that they've had their best attendance year ever.
For sure.
For crossing over the season before, and which was their previous record. More sellouts, higher percentage of sellouts than they've ever had. So there's value to that. But mercy, could it hurt some of these national outlets to cover in Orlando every now and then?
Right.
Even New York doesn't get the national love, and it's New York.
Yeah. Right? Even Oklahoma City doesn't, and they're the number one team in the West now. And Minnesota wasn't getting it when they were number one, and Denver wasn't getting it last year when they were number one. The bias is real.
You know what I love about it is, by the way, it's such a cool story that no one really wanted to discuss except just a touch. The fact that the West had never ended in a three-way tie. The West East. Now, no conference had ever ended in a three-way tie.
And they're all from the same division. They're all from the same division.
No one wants to talk about that. Everyone's just like, yeah, but the Warriors can make it, right? It's like,
right.
Yeah, but the Warriors suck. Why do we want to look? Steph Curry's fun and Draymond Green's a nutcase and Klay Thompson's got no legs. Is that the story we want to talk about every single day? Come on. To me, it's
now for our puff piece on Kevon Looney's mouthpiece.
I deactivated my Twitter. I don't know. I think it takes a month officially to activate, so I'll be gone soon. But I haven't been on Twitter since before the basketball season started, way before.
It's been almost 3 years for me now. It's almost 3 years. And I got to tell you, man, I have not missed it for a day.
I don't miss the fact that every day, no matter what's happening in the day, somehow on my timeline, a LeBron versus MJ thing shows up. And I'm like, you can't do this every day. You just can't. It's just impossible for your brain to do this. I don't know why we're doing this. And that's the same thing whenever I turn on one of these networks. It's like, is AD healthy? He played 65 games. Is that a big... What are you talking about, everybody?
Kendrick Perkins and Stephen A. Smith debate Austin Reeves' shoe selection.
And then every now and then they get like, okay, so how does Denver match up with LA? I'm like, shut up. Shut up.
And they'll always say that the small market team is the one in danger. Always.
Exactly. Now, to be fair, at least now Denver LA is the matchup. But before, it was just, oh yeah, well, is OKC real?
Yeah. Nor is it a given. I mean, we might as well talk about it. Nor is it a given that Denver's just going to roll through that. Their starting lineup is impeccable. They're healthy-ish enough. The bench has been okay. But the Lakers are very multifaceted and deep in that lineup with young legs, with veterans. I've been talking about it all year. I'm looking forward to that series in the first round. I wish that they'd be meeting a little bit later in the playoffs. I hope that Denver puts on the brass knuckles and just ousts LA and kind of just sets this to rest once and for all, because they got rid of those demons in a big way last year. To do it again 2 years in a row is going to force the Lakers to go, I don't know if we can beat these guys as presently constructed. So I'm rooting for Denver. That's no surprise, but I do expect a good series. And you and I have both been on record, we're Lakers haters by trade, but this has been one of those few Lakers teams that you don't really actually hate. Like, it's a good roster, and there's a bunch of good dudes on that roster.
It's a miracle this roster exists. Like, it's a miracle. This, like, by the way, did you see the graphic? What was it? I guess we can go ahead and just go to this game, even though it's the last one of the night for Saturday. Is Austin Reeves, who played all 82 games this year? They put out a graphic that was like they had him, and like it's like all 82 games. You're just like, well, that's an interesting graphic. He played the fact that he played all 82 games. That's interesting.
So only a few guys out there. I mean, I'll go look right now. There's only a few guys out there though that you can say that about these days.
Well, I just thought it was an interesting, like, all right, let's make a graphic about this. And you're like, okay, we got a playoff game tomorrow, so I don't know.
Yeah, Reeves did play all 82 games. He started 57 of them.
Okay, so I was like, all right, fair enough. He did appear in all of them. Which, by the way, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but did you see the story on the Dante DiVincenzo that he's not eligible for most improved player because technically he didn't play enough of the
20-plus minute games or 25-minute
minute games, but there's a window that if you play like the NBA will give you that, like if you play like above 15 minutes or something a game, they'll give you credit for some of that, and you still missed out by like a game or two.
Yeah,
you're like, okay, this is a little. I mean, this is.
Hey man, I win my fantasy basketball championship in the league that we run for this show. I win the championship if Victor Wembanyama doesn't get sat 2 out of the 3 final games, and I lost by 8 points, not 8 categories, 8 points total. If he shows up, we win, and that happens.
Loser mentality, San Antonio. Come on. Yeah. Okay, well, let's just wrap up this Lakers Nuggets game. So you're talking about how we were rooting for the Lakers to basically lose, and that's fine. But they can be good in this game. We thought that also last year, but Denver also exercised a whole lot of demons last year and beat the snot out of the Lakers and gave them no chances to be in that series. Now, is Denver a little fat and happy? Do they feel like that they're? But you would think that if they're like the 4th seed this year, but they're still tied. They were still tied for the 1st seed.
I don't feel them as being fat and happy. They had a dogfight in that division with the Thunder, with the Timberwolves all year. They were in that fight the entire way. They did drop a lot of games, but they missed, again, a lot of games with injuries. And especially, it's going to come down to Jamal Murray. I think he's the number one X factor here. Jokic is a given. And the Lakers can do all they want to try to neutralize or make life tough on Jokic, and he will find a way to still contribute. Jamal Murray has got to be on. You're going to need Michael Porter Jr. to play well in the series. Remember, last year in the playoffs, he was really, really, really struggling, and Denver still won a championship despite that. Porter has had a lot more confidence this season, but that's got to translate into the playoffs. The other 2 guys for me that are X factors here is Aaron Gordon, who's been just, has turned into a really rugged type of player. He's given up that Blake Griffin Jr., type of moniker that Aaron Gordon had when he was coming into the league of, oh, he's a dunker, he's going to be the next Blake Griffin, whatever, to now being this defender. Yeah, he can finish a lob play, but he is just really battling in there, and they're trying to grow Peyton Watson into that same type of role. Watson, a rookie last year who hardly played, this year has been in the rotation, is a phenomenal shot blocker, runs the floor well, kind of limited offensively. But those are the 2 guys that you are going to need to check LeBron James a lot. Those are the 2 guys that you're going to need to help out on Anthony Davis, maybe even guard Davis straight up, depending on how you want to deploy Jokic. It's going to be really important that both of them stay out of foul trouble, that both of them are able to finish plays. But I think more importantly, that both of those 2 players institute their will and their physicality on that Lakers front line and make the Lakers come match it, not the other way around. Because the Lakers are physical, and they've got big bodies beyond just LeBron and AD. Rui Hachimura has really, I think, toughened up over the last couple of years. Jackson Hayes plays with a lot of force. There's a couple others, even somebody like Taurean Prince, who's a much smaller guy. He's lanky, he's rugged, he sticks his nose in there. LA is not a pushover soft team, and Denver's going to need to be able to set that tone. It's going to start with Gordon and with Peyton Watson.
All right, next up on the list is a team that we texted about you didn't really want to see. As the Minnesota Timberwolves fan that you are, the Phoenix Suns. That's there are better matchups, I guess you could have had going into this one. But regardless, we can still talk about this here game.
Mm-hmm.
You get to start at home. That's a good thing. That's a good sign. This also has been your team that has been good all season long at home.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a team that's been good all season long. And I think for the most part, is everybody healthy? Is everybody back? I think Cat's back, right?
Cat came back for the final 2 or 3 games. Looked okay.
This is it's probably as good as you're going to be right now. So as far as health is concerned. So if you're going to go into a matchup you don't love in Phoenix, you at least got all your weapons around you. So what do you think?
Here's how much I hate this matchup for Minnesota.
All right.
10 out of 10 times, I would rather be seeing the Oklahoma City Thunder, who I think is the most dangerous team in the West. I'd be rather seeing them in the first round. I would rather be seeing the defending champ Denver Nuggets in the first round than the Phoenix Suns. And this is based off of the matchup. It's based off of what I've seen through the regular season games. Phoenix is the lone team in the Western Conference that had Minnesota's number all year, and they played them mostly at the end of the season. This is not, we played great at the beginning of the year and we're going to try to bring that in. No, they met up during, I think, 3 times during the final 6 weeks of the season, and Phoenix had that number. It's the shooting ability. It was playing zone. You know, Frank Vogel is a good defensive coach, and he draws good defensive schemes. He's done that at every stop he's been at. They had an excellent zone that really stymied the Wolves, and it baited Anthony Edwards into some of the few young bad habits that he's still trying to get rid of, which by and large he mostly has gotten rid of, but that I'm going to put my head down and try to beat the defense when the team is not playing well. That still is a bugaboo at times for Anthony Edwards, and he has fallen into that trap over and over and over as the Suns bait him. And it's going to unfortunately require Anthony Edwards to suddenly mature in this way for this series and to keep it that way. And it's going to take somebody like Karl-Anthony Towns similarly to move the basketball, knock down shots, be in rhythm. Even Naz Reid has struggled against the Suns. That's what's really disturbing, is that it's not just, Anthony Edwards has had trouble with their scheme. Towns was hurt for part of that. It's that nobody has played well against Phoenix defensively, and you don't even think of the Suns as that great of a defensive team, although they've been very solid on that end all year. But then Phoenix's ability to shoot from every single position and the star power that they do have, they're overqualified to be a 6 seed. It's really just the injuries that have kept them down at that level to the 6. This is a tough matchup for Minnesota, and I would hate to see this really magical, the first time in 20 years that Minnesota's really been relevant and really been a team that you respect, and that goes beyond the Jimmy Butler season or some of these times that there's been little blips. Even 2 years ago, they were a good team. They were kind of a punk team. This year, Minnesota was good. They were a team you really did not want to play. It would be tough to see this season end in the first round, but Phoenix is more than capable of beating Minnesota, and the Wolves are going to have their hands absolutely full. They have got to show us something that they did not show us yet during the regular season against Phoenix. That's the only team in the West you can say that about. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'll say this about Phoenix is that they're not particularly dominant or great on the road. They blow
a lot of leads.
They're one of the worst teams in the conference on the road. That's in the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about, obviously. And that's where obviously they'll have to play their first 2 games. I can see sort of, if I was in your position, as like thinking of it more of a fan standpoint, which is, hey, I'd love to be like a 1-8 right now. Like it'd be soups nice to possibly be looking at like New Orleans or something,
Or the
potentially,
Kings. Yeah, those are
or
teams that Minnesota
Sacramento.
would be fine with.
But I don't particularly love this Phoenix team. I think they have now the injuries are one thing, but I do think
Mhm.
they have kind of struggled gelling overall. And I think when you have a Minnesota team that's been basically essentially together for the vast majority of the season,
Mhm.
that has been not just hot over the last month and got up to the 3 seed, even though they were tied for the 1st seed. They've been good all year against good teams and against bad teams all year.
And the
It may not
core was together last year as well.
exactly.
You know.
That was my next point. And it's a
Mhm.
team that's been together for a while. I would be surprised if Phoenix won this series. I would.
I
Now
hope you're right. I
this is
hope you are right.
this might be 6 games, but I think it's probably Minnesota in 6 at the most, just because Phoenix has a lot of top end talent that, if healthy, if they stay healthy,
Mhm.
which they've proven literally in the playoffs for not to be able to be a thing. That I don't trust Phoenix. I thought that they were going to be able to get together at the end of last year once everybody came back and healthy and sort of figure it out going into the playoffs. That clearly wasn't the case.
I think you picked them to be in the finals in
I
our season preview. I'm pretty sure I picked the Lakers and you picked the Suns, if I remember correctly.
I I don't disagree because I really like the roster, but it's just,
Mhm.
what I predicted versus what has sort of shown up on the court has been kind of
Mhm.
different. And this West, Minnesota's battle tested. This isn't like a cupcake Boston hanging out for like
Right.
20 games up
Oh
top of the
yeah,
East.
yeah. They've been in the trenches
Yeah,
all year to get to this point. That is
yeah.
true.
So yeah, I'm a ball on that Minnesota rear end to let you know to get you to the semis. All right,
The
and
the one the one thing that scares me for Phoenix is that they have added, and we said this at the beginning of the year, they were short on defensive guys. They add a Royce O'Neal. They add a Thad Young. They've had Josh Okogie in the mix. They've got enough of those guys in addition to what Kevin Durant does. Grayson Allen has played so well for them that he earned himself a 4-year extension. Um, they've and then even David Roddy is a guy that can come in and give you like really physical minutes. Um, they're tougher, and I think that some of this, they only finished in 6. They only had 49 wins. They were 7 games behind Minnesota. So much of that, and even the chemistry, is just that injury base. It's an asterisk. But I hope you're right. Minnesota's got to do it now, and it's going to be a fun matchup. There's got to be some demons exercise here. Last thing I'll say, to me, this is a coaching matchup.
mm-hmm.
This is a test on Chris Finch to go. This is a team we have not played well at. Finch is getting a lot of accolades as a guy like a Nick Nurse, like an Eric Spoelstra, who's good at adjustments, who's good at finding the pulse of his team and adjusting around them. I don't know if he's had too often to be like the in-game adjustment guy, though that has existed. But now he's got to be able to craft a game plan against a veteran championship winning coach in Frank Vogel, who clearly had figured something out against the Wolves. And now it's Chris Finch's turn to be able to come back with adjustments and change the series. And I do think it's going to be on him to not only make that scheme change, but then to get in the ear of Anthony Edwards to go, what you have done so far does not work against this particular Suns team. We have to approach this differently.
Let's go to the New York Knicks hosting the Philadelphia 76ers and what is going to be a clear sweep by the New York Knicks. So I guess we will theoretically talk about it because we have to. Jalen Brunson has been phenomenal all season long. The Knicks are as healthy without the poor man's MVP, Julius Randle, as they have been the entire season. They've also been playing the last couple of weeks together. So they sort of feel like it's good as they're going to be going into the year, which is so much as what we talk about the NBA going into the playoffs, which is injuries. Who is actually healthy? The Knicks are probably as good as they're going to be. Joel Embiid came back late. He has clearly shown signs of being a little beat up too, but still a force when he's out there. And if he's healthy enough, I don't think Joel Embiid's the guy that's going to make it through 7 games if he has to get 7 games through this New York team. I think this is probably – I can't do it as a fan. This will be a tough series. I still think it's probably most 6. I like New York at home, especially getting 4 of those at home. New York's very, very good at home, and they have been all season. In Philadelphia, I'm not reading a ton into the Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid at the end of the game just because everybody fights all the time. I mean, Draymond Green's punching teammates, right? Like, stuff just happens. But I do think New York's the better team here. And if Joel Embiid was fully healthy, and I feel like I could trust that guy and them sort of be gelling, maybe I think differently. But I think New York's in a much better position right now.
I'd feel a lot more confident, as all Knicks fans would, if you have Julius Randle in the stable there. OG Anunoby, though, is a defensive upgrade over Randle and can play that power forward spot.
Yes.
It's really going to come down to foul trouble. Can Isaiah Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson stay on the floor against the foul drawing machine that is Joel Embiid? Because if they can't, now you're getting down into Precious Achiuwa, who's a little bit undersized to be checking Joel Embiid.
He's had to do it
in the past.
Achiuwa will get wrecked by Embiid.
So right, and then you're having to play down Anunoby, where Anunoby can hold his own, but you want OG Anunoby defending on the wings against a Tobias Harris, against a Kelly Oubre, maybe even against Tyrese Maxey, depending on how you deploy Josh Hart. So, yeah, New York's got the defensive weapons to make this interesting, but Philly did just show, and they've shown all year, that they can play tough. They can get into one of these dogfight type of games, dogfight type of series. You're right that everything, as always, hinges on Embiid's health. I don't know. To me, this feels like 7 games. I know you're picking New York in 6. I'm going to go 7 just because if Embiid is healthy, this again is a team that is massively overqualified to be a 7 seed. This feels like a semifinals matchup because that's what it should have been.
It is, yeah.
That's what it should have been, barring those injuries, in the same way that like Minnesota and Phoenix feels like a semifinals matchup, not a first rounder. So this is going to be tough, but you're right. New York being at home, they don't fear Philly. They've got the tools to win their type of game, but Philly is not like a soft team that you push around either. They're gonna swing too.
No, this is when we talk about sweet pumping in the face action. This is gonna be that nasty game. This is going to be the nasty.
This is Eastern Conference basketball.
Yeah, This is the one that you're going to be like, okay, I'm gonna have to sit through that one.
I may have to ice after watching the game. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, my face hurts. Oh, everything hurts. But yeah, this is going to be a tough one. But like, this is Tom Thibodeau 101. Like, this is how he likes to play. He's got a roster that is complete with players that can play like that. He's finally got an elite scorer on his roster to be able to score. Like you said, if it wasn't for the Julius Randle injury, this team would be clearly the favorite to be able to win.
Well, I'll say this. If Randle was there, I would take the Knicks in 6. Without Randle, I'm saying it's a 7-game series, and I'm not picking a winner. That's how much JR means to me there.
What a cop-out.
Yeah, take the absolutely.
Knicks. Take the Knicks in the money. What is what are the Knicks? The Knicks are 2.5-point favorites, bro. By the way, the total, the betting total, the Knicks aren't even the lowest betting total right now. It's the Cavs right now. The Cavs.
Tom Thibodeau, if you're listening, and I know you are because I know you listen to the show every single week that we do it.
Well, I email it to him, yeah.
Please don't forget that Bojan Bogdanovic is on your bench and that the dude can score 30 points. Like, when your offense is struggling, and it will, please do not forget that he's there. This is the time when you need to dust off relief pitchers like that and let them come in and control a game. That's why you got Bojan Bogdanovic, and it's been really disappointing how little he's been deployed. I know you didn't have much time with him, but come on, Tom. Come on. You can do it.
All right, let's get to the Sunday matchups. So right now the Celtics have no opponent. Will they get to just automatically go to the semifinals? Or will they have to wait for their opponent? We'll see. Mm-hmm. We'll see what the NBA and what Adam Silver decides to do. Maybe they'll just give them a bye into the semis. I'm not sure. So we'll talk about that just a second. But let's get to the 2 games that we do know. Mavs, Clippers. Man, I'll tell you this.
Ooh-wee.
I want the Mavs to win so badly if Kyrie doesn't play. Because I find Dallas so fun to watch this year. They're so enjoyable. I was king of the I don't think this is going to work train. And at the end of last year, it didn't seem like it was going to work.
Yeah.
They took forever to bring Kyrie back for this season. So for this to work, and they probably got the NBA Play of the Year from this tandem. If you remember the play where Luka's diving on the ground and he's sliding for a ball and he ends up giving it but sort of behind his head to Kyrie, and Kyrie lobs it up like when it looks like it's about to be a blocked shot, he lobs it forward. Oh, just silly sauce. Like, it's a good team, a really fun team to watch. If it wasn't Kyrie, it's a very rootable team for me to be able to watch, to be able to play. And by the way, I think the best basketball being played in the West. Like, it's the most fun, enjoyable overall, top to bottom. Outside of that, I have no love and interest really in the Clippers doing anything good. Like, they're not as fun to me. I would root for Dallas if it wasn't for that. So I'm going to take the Joel C. Cortez approach and say I hope they both lose, or at least I'm not rooting for anyone and picking one of them. But one I do find more enjoyable than the other.
I'm a big Kawhi Leonard stan, despite all the ups and downs. I would love for him to get this Clippers team just past the history of the Clippers, and that would mean a Western Conference Finals appearance, maybe even an NBA Finals appearance. That would blow some minds. But here again, Kawhi Leonard dinged up at the end of a season. It's the same thing that we see with so many of the guys on that type of list, Joel Embiid, even Jimmy Butler. You know, you talk about playoff Jimmy. We've also seen broken down Jimmy plenty of times in the playoffs, and we forget about that. You know, so it's the same thing with Kawhi. Dallas is a team that they've got to win a series, maybe even two, because they keep getting in as a middling team with Luka and then not advancing. And this group, along with Kyrie, you've got star power in addition to Luka, star power that actually seems to work with Luka, and they did a nice job of bolstering that supporting cast with a couple of other lob catchers and PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. They've been really effective in the starting lineup, and it also moved a couple of guys to the bench that now are more helpful there. So yeah, Dallas is the more likable team. The Clippers are deep still. The Clippers are veterans still. This is not an easy series to pick. I will take Dallas in 7 because this has been that type of series. These two teams have met like 2 or 3 times already over the last couple of years, and the Clippers have had their number. I think Dallas finally does it this year. But if they don't, I mean, then you're gonna have a lot of shade starting to go Luka's way too, of like, all right, dude, when are you gonna win a playoff series? And that's a valid question at that point in his career.
It's 100% valid, right? Like I don't think you can avoid that for the most part. Yeah, I'm gonna avoid. I really am. I want to say Dallas. I'm gonna avoid picking. This is the only series
I took that route. You get one of those. Yeah.
I can't have a Kyrie-led team being fun. I can't have it happen.
It goes against everything this man believes in.
Can you imagine if the Knicks and Mavericks were to play in the that's the that's the NBA Finals I'm rooting for, because then I want to murder them. All right, so the Pacers and the Bucks is going to be a phenomenal series, potentially, but we're not looking very positive for Giannis Antetokounmpo to be able to be in this series, or at least to start it off. So these two teams already don't like each other. These two teams are clear rivals, and Indiana has made that very clear every time that they've gotten onto the court. And now Milwaukee may be without the Giannis. This is a scary spot for Doc Rivers. This is a very scary spot for the Doc.
And yes, this is a 3-6 matchup, whatever it is. Let's not forget that Milwaukee won 49 games this year. Indiana won 47. They're separated by 2 games.
They're the same.
One of these teams is coached by Doc Rivers. The other is coached by Rick Carlisle. One of these teams won't have Giannis and didn't look all that great with Giannis, and Damian Lillard has been in and out of the starting lineup. Granted, Tyrese Halliburton has been on a major shooting slump since the All-Star break, really. But I'm taking the Pacers in this one, and I might be taking the Pacers in 5, maybe even 6.
Man.
The Pacers were my team. I mean, at the beginning of the year, I told
Yeah.
you, like, watch out for Indy. This is going to be one of those teams that is fun, and not a team that you really want to play. And this is the classic type of upset special in a first round where you have a team that's young, that's fast, that's athletic, that's well coached, and they're running up against a team that is old-ish and has not been on the same page. Those are the and now dinged up too. Those are the type of veteran teams that become roadkill
So
really easy in a first round.
let me figure out if I can do the math. I may be up on this. The first guy coaching won like 30 games. The interim guy won like 2, right? And then, so Doc's won 17 games with this roster and this team?
Something like that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Indiana, man. Like, I know they don't have the experience in this position, but we're not saying we're going to pick them to win the East.
No.
That's where the experience comes in. I can't imagine Milwaukee seeing a matchup that they would hate more.
Milwaukee has already proven over the last few years that they have no problem losing first round series, right?
Exactly. I think Milwaukee would rather play Boston right now than play Indiana, because Indiana wants to come for their throat.
Yes.
Right. This is a very much
personal.
This is a Sacramento Golden State kind of thing. This is we don't like you. We've never liked you. Now we're good enough to be able to shove it in your face. We're going to take full advantage of this. And buddy, this is not a great place for Doc Rivers to be finding himself up 1-0 or maybe himself down 3-1 and sort of blowing it, because there is almost zero chance he gets to blow a 3-1 lead in this scenario. Zero chance.
One would imagine.
Oh my God. Okay, so the Celtics, they will take on the. Okay, so
I'm taking the Pacers.
You're taking the Pacers, but I'm taking the Pacers too. The Celtics will take on you're gently leaning and hoping it's Chicago.
Yeah.
And I would like to lean that way because I'd like to never see Miami again. They're the zombie team that deserves to die quickly. So if it's that case, that's a sweep, right?
If it's Chicago, it's a sweep.
Yeah.
If it's Miami, I'll take Boston in 5, maybe 6 if
But
Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, but he'll come back from the dead and he'll play in game 5 or something like that.
Believe nothing with Miami.
Right. He'll be on one of those little like knee carts when you get your ACL done and you got to scoot around on the cart. He'll somehow get a waiver to be able to, scoot around and play that game. All
right. I'm with you. Very, very easy series there for Billy Donovan, who still can't get all the good players there, can't coach his way out of a paper bag to be able to get higher than a play-in seed for the most part.
They can't get healthy either.
That's the thing. Like, sometimes, it's not just, I'm not blaming just Billy Donovan. Sometimes, franchises get cursed for a little bit. And maybe you just got to clean out the coach and be like, all right, but we've talked about this for a couple of years. I mean, there was a handful of years ago where they were really, really good, right?
Yep.
And they were going against was it Cleveland? Like, was it LeBron's Cleveland? And shoot, I may be wrong on this.
Are you talking the Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah years, like way back to that?
No. I'm talking about just a handful of years ago where
they had Lonzo Ball, where he was coming in and it was him and Zach LaVine,
okay.
And DeMar DeRozan was having a career year. They had all the pieces, it looked like.
And they were good. They were really good, and then the injuries immediately started happening. Like, I wouldn't say immediately day one, but
yeah.
All right, let's talk about finally. This here is the Oklahoma City Thunder, which what we think is going to be against the Sacramento Kings. You've already alluded to it in your commentary just a moment before. But if you want to talk about the very old veteran matchup versus the young guys, Sacramento's the old dude, the old heads that have been in it, that have had success in the season, that know what it's like to come into the first round and not perform well, and how to be able to react to it. This is OKC, their first shot around this with this iteration of the team. Do you think there's a shot that Sacramento would make things ugly for OKC, maybe push them to 7 or win it?
If Sacramento can beat New Orleans, now they've got momentum. This is a type of game where, the Kings may be able to come in and steal one. I know OKC is a really tough place to play, but if you have those early jitters, being the number 1 seed, now there's pressure to perform. You've been sitting for over a week. As a young team, you haven't really navigated that type of downtime before. These are all just new things. Yes, Oklahoma City was in the play-in last year, but this is a new situation for that group. This is how you learn. It's how the Kings had to learn last year. So it's not that the Kings are old heads. It's just that they're one step further along. Oklahoma City, on the other hand, is so talented, so good defensively, did add some veteran know-how and a guy like Gordon Hayward and a couple of other guys along the way, that they'll have those voices in the locker room of guys who've been down the road before, for whatever that's worth. That, no, I'm not picking Sacramento to upset Oklahoma City in the first round, but to potentially steal 2 games and make it interesting, yes, I think is very possible, especially, that proverbial 8 seed walks in and steals game 1 against a 1 seed that's been sitting too long. We see that all the time, and I think this is the type of scenario where that happens. Granted, OKC is a really tough place to play on the road, but you know what? Sacramento is a really tough place to play on the road too. This is going to be the loudest of all the series between those 2 home courts.
Yeah, you know what? I did not even think about that. Is a great point. Yeah. That just completely skipped my mind. The decibels will be insane for both these 2 places.
Yeah, and again, we are assuming so much, and now that we've said all this, Murphy's Law says New Orleans is going to pull this out and get into the first round against Oklahoma City, and we're all going to collectively yawn when that happens. But if it is the Kings, and I hope that it is, just bring your earplugs. That is a absolutely bonkers set of home courts to play on.
Man, I can't believe that went past me. 2 of the, at worst case, 3, maybe best. They may be the 2 best home court crowds in the entire league. Yeah, I love that. You know what? I that's it. That's what to pay attention to the most in this series. The energy that's going to be in the buildings, because it's going to be bonkers for both these 2. And OKC hasn't been this good in a long time. It's since Durant and Russ. And Harden and Russ. Yeah. So you're talking, that's what, a decade ago, right? 2013, 2014 team.
Feels like that.
They're going to be rowdy. And last year was just a prelude. They were in the play-in. And they were like, hey man, what can we be? Well, guess what? We're going to be the 1 seed. We're going to be the 1 seed. We're going to be the 1 seed. Because we were talking like that. I'll agree with you. All right. Okay. That's going to do it for us. I cannot wait for these here playoffs to become real. I was watching on Sunday with bated breath to see the tiebreaker scenarios work out, and the Knicks had to go to overtime to be able to get to that 2 seed. I was just like, oh, come on. Why are you sucking to the Bulls right now? Stop it. Anyway.
The Bulls have played that spoiler route a little bit. They've done it off and on this year, which is why
they're a bunch of jerks. They can be good at times, and they can be really dumb at times.
Right.
Was it? Didn't last year they just lay an egg in? Was it Chicago that laid the egg in the play-in?
Yeah. Yep. They did great in that first game, and we all picked them over Miami, who was dead in the water with injuries, and then Miami just came and put them to bed immediately. And this would be phenomenal if Chicago looks at what the Kings just did to the Warriors and go, why not us? Let's exercise some demons. Let's get some revenge. It's just 1 game. We only have to beat these guys 1 time. Yeah. It would be phenomenal if they could do that. But, killing Freddy Krueger was supposed to be easy too.
And they made a bunch of movies about that. All right, Joel C. Cortez, that's going to do it for this here podcast. I'm excited. Are you excited?
I am excited. This is one of those best times of the year.
How does it feel, by the way, to be tied for the best record, but you're the 3 seed? Not the matchup, but it's just weird, right? To have such a good season to be tied with at the top, and you're technically the 3 seed, even though you're tied for the best record.
The issue for me comes down to Towns having been hurt, only coming back with 3 games to go. Chemistry is a little bit shaky, trying to reacclimate him. Anthony Edwards has been on a little bit of a slump over the last 10, 12 games. He's been really hit or miss. You can tell that his legs are tired. He has had to carry a lot for this team. So they're not clicking on all cylinders like they were around the All-Star break. They've had some of those stretches this year where they were really dialed in and just mowing through people, whether it was good opponents or bad opponents. Minnesota does not have that type of momentum right now, and it is all dogfight based. And then you still have the little bugaboos around there like, okay, Towns has never really been in big playoff games, save the last couple years. Anthony Edwards has a lot to learn. Rudy Gobert is a guy who, like a Donovan Mitchell, has had his share of playoff flameouts when he was in Utah. Struggles. There's some demons that have to get exercised for that whole group. And then, like we talked about before, it's Phoenix. So yeah, I feel good. It's nice to be in this position, but it's not one of those like, hey, we'll see you in the finals. Like, no. We got a lot of games left to play before we even get that route.
No, last year, as long as Denver sort of was taking things like showed how they could be, it was their conference basically to be able to take. Maybe Phoenix could have given but clearly that never happened.
Yeah.
This year, I think it's a much deeper West. There's many more teams that can compete, so it's cool. In the East, Boston's just like show up, somebody show up.
Yep.
Yeah, and they're gonna get like a breeze for their first 4 games, and then by the time they show up, what's they went the
semifinals would be against either Cleveland or Orlando.
Cleveland or Orlando, yeah.
Doesn't strike fear into you. They're going to give you a series, but you better win that if you're Boston. You know, you'd rather see Orlando for sure than the Cavs. But
could you imagine Boston losing the semifinals this year? This team.
Stranger things have happened.
I mean, we mainly in Milwaukee, but we're going to see the strange thing with Doc Rivers. That's what's going to be the cool thing. All right, Mr. Cortez, that's going to do it for us. Say goodbye to the good people.
Goodbye, good people. If you want the audio-only version, Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. If you want the video version, we are on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, do all those good things. This has been Basketball by Association. We'll do it again next week.